For 3,000 years, the pharaohs of ancient Egypt attempted to fulfill their greatest dream: immortality. There were different possible ways by which to succeed, and each chose their own. But only one, the greatest, tried them all: Ramses II.
I'm introducing this episode to you, a story of a great king, the greatest of all the kings of ancient Egypt. You will go with me to his tomb and his temple to understand the quest for immortality.
It took just 3,000 years for the Egyptian civilization to come into being, reach its peak, and fall into decline. It did, nevertheless, succeed in preserving much of its ancient splendor and history, handed down through its monuments, knowledge, and men. However, we cannot describe all as simple men. Some should be considered gods: the pharaohs. Throughout the history of Egypt, many different pharaohs rose to the throne. Many left no real trace of their existence. Some achieved great feats. Few left proof of truly exceptional works, and only one succeeded in tasks worthy of a god: Ramses II.
This is the tomb of Ramses II. It was the first tomb to be constructed at the entrance of the Valley of the Kings. And this tomb, you can see it's about 686 meters square large. It is the largest tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The tomb actually is for one of the kings who ruled Egypt about 66 years.
Ramses II died an old man at around the age of 90 in 1213 BC. As was the custom of such an important figure, he had a tomb built worthy of his importance, a place to preserve his body for all eternity. The layout of KV7 tomb is very complex. The large burial chamber, raised up on 8 pillars that today have unfortunately suffered a great deal of damage, is accessed through a long corridor. A number of secondary rooms lead off from the main chamber. Here, the mummified corpse of Ramses II was laid to rest undisturbed forever. The tomb was, therefore, the most secret place there could be, a place that no one should or would ever be able to enter. And yet the life and work of Ramses II was characterized by an impressive demonstration of his own personality. Each and every action, whether political, religious, social, or economical, served his own propaganda purpose. A prime example of this conduct is the Temple of Abu Simbel, ordered by Ramses II to show off his own personality and intimidate populations beyond the southern borders of Egypt. The sheer size of the temple is striking. The facade alone stands 33 meters high and 38 meters wide, and is enhanced by 4 enormous seated statues of Ramses, each more than 20 meters tall. And yet time waits for no man. Over the centuries, the temple was forgotten and covered over by sand from the desert, where it remained undisturbed until 1813, when it was rediscovered by the Swiss explorer Jean-Louis Burckhardt. It was the Italian Giovanni Belzoni, however, in 1817, who began removing the sand and first reached the entrance. sight before him is the same enjoyed by visitors today. A large room decorated by tall statues of Ramses II as Osiris. This leads off to a series of other rooms. The walls are decorated with battle scenes, showing Ramses defeating and subduing enemy populations. At the bottom, we find the Holy of the Holiest, the most sacred place of all. Here, 4 statues sit representing the pharaoh amidst the 3 gods to whom the temple is dedicated: Ra, Horakti, Amon, and Ptah.
Well, the people considered him as a god, and he himself reclaimed that he is one of the gods. And you can see this very clear at the Temple of Abu Simbel. When you reach the Holy of the Holiest at the end of the temple, you find Ramses II is sitting beside other gods. So he is himself, he became himself a god.
In 1960, the Egyptian government began construction work on the Aswan High Dam to create Lake Nasser. The Temple of Abu Simbel would have been submerged by the new lake. It was therefore decided that it should be saved, leading to the incredible feat sometime between 1964 and 1968, in which the 2 temples were dismantled into 1,500 blocks and rebuilt 65 meters higher up, to absolute perfection. Before being moved, the orientation was studied in such a way that on the 22nd of February and the 22nd of October, the rising sun lit the statues at the bottom. After the work was completed, this phenomenon now takes place one day early. The side rooms are instead decorated with many images of Ramses II, together with the major divinities of the Egyptian pantheon. Ramses had a smaller temple built next to the main one, which was devoted to Hathor, goddess of love, and his wife, Nefertari. Although smaller in size, it remains extremely important. This is the only Egyptian temple to be devoted to a queen. Nefertari was the first great royal wife of Ramses II, and also the most loved. She was chosen for his son by Sethi I when the young prince was just 15 years old. Despite this, the royal couple were greatly in love, as can be seen by her inclusion at her husband's side in many of his monuments, at times even depicted of equal size, and by the many works devoted to her. But of all these, the most beautiful and important by far is in the Valley of the Queens.
This desolate wadi is the Valley of the Queens, one of the royal burial grounds of the New Kingdom. Ramses II used this valley for the burial of his beloved mother Tuya, as well as for the burials of some of his great royal wives. Of these tombs, the most beautiful by far is that of his first and most favorite queen, Nefertari.
Still today, more than 3,000 years later, the tomb retains all its original splendor.
The tomb of Nefertari is considered by many the most beautiful tomb in the Theban necropolis. And I, for one, would not argue. It is truly incredible. Nefertari was the most important of Ramses II's 8 chief wives. She married her husband before he came to the throne, and until she died in the 25th year of his reign, she was his most important, his principal consort. We can look at some of the beautiful scenes here. Here we have Nefertari. This is actually a spell from the Book of the Dead. And here she is playing the game of Senet against an invisible opponent. You can see how beautifully she's drawn, and there she is sitting in front of the Senet game. We see Nefertari as a mummy being protected by Isis and Nephthys, who are the sisters of Osiris and help him be resurrected. So she's again playing the role of Osiris here. Here she is as Osiris. Nefertari wears this red ribbon around her waist, and here she is as Osiris, again wearing this red ribbon. And you can also see this sort of feminine form of Osiris here. Normally Osiris is male, he's the king of the dead. He's the king of the netherworld, but here Nefertari is becoming Osiris. And now we'll go down to the netherworld. The tomb itself is a representation of the netherworld, so we will go down into the netherworld. We're now in the burial chamber, the deepest part of the tomb. The tomb was discovered in 1904 by Ernesto Schiaparelli. And when he found the tomb, it had already been robbed, probably in antiquity. Did find, however, the decoration much more intact than it is now. The tomb is built in not very good rock, in very friable rock, and the decoration is on plaster that was used to cover the walls and then carved and painted. So it comes away easily from the walls and suffers very easily from things like humidity. The decoration of the burial chamber is dedicated to Nefertari's interaction with various gods and goddesses, and also scenes and texts from the Book of the Dead. On this wall, we have Nefertari coming in and passing through the gates of the netherworld, which are guarded by these knife-wielding genii. Very interesting names. I particularly like the one in the middle, who has a woman's body, a lioness's head, and snake ears. The decoration in this side chamber is extremely well preserved and well worth looking at. Here we have some beautiful representations of Nefertari herself and a gallery of some of the most important gods in the Egyptian pantheon. We begin here with Nefertari, beautifully attired in a flowing white garment, the red belt around her waist, the vulture headdress that identifies her as a queen and a queen mother, jewelry, rouge on her cheeks. She's really just beautiful. Making offerings to the god Ptah, the patron god of Memphis and the god of artisans. Then coming around here, we have another similar and equally beautiful representation of Nefertari again. Here she's with the god Thoth, the god of wisdom, the god of writing. So here on the back wall, we have some beautiful scenes of Nefertari offering to some other gods. Here we have Nefertari offering to the god Osiris, king of the netherworld, and these 4 little guys are the 4 sons of Horus. And here we have Nefertari making offerings, the same type of offering table, to the god Atum, the great creator god of Heliopolis, who wears the red and the white crown of a united Egypt. And also take a look here at Nefertari's cartouche. Her name is enclosed in this oval ring, like a king's name. In earlier times, it was only the king's name that could be in this cartouche, this oval ring that symbolizes eternity. By this time, important queens' names could also be put in cartouches. So here on the side wall, continuing onto this wall, we have an image of Nefertari worshiping the celestial cows and one bull. And here we have one of the most interesting scenes in the tomb. When Nefertari dies, she descends into the netherworld and is joined with Osiris. And then in the darkest hour of the night, Nefertari/Osiris is joined by Re, and together at dawn, they are reborn and resurrected, and creation begins again. And this being is protected here by Isis and Nephthys, and they can be identified by their names, which they wear on their heads.
Ramses II imposed the cult of his personality in many different ways. Perhaps the clearest of these was his enthusiasm to build, as shown by the expansion of the main temple complexes of Thebes, Karnak, and Luxor. In the Temple of Amun-Ra in Karnak, he created many important constructions. The great hypostyle hall designed by Amenhotep III was only begun by Sethi I. Ramses completed it, creating a huge area divided up by 134 24-meter-high columns with diameters exceeding 10 meters. He then decorated the walls of the room with bas-reliefs that celebrated his personality and military feats. He also ordered the construction of the great sacred lake that priests would enter to purify themselves before ritual ceremonies. The water of the lake, coming from the Nile, provides a symbolic representation of the primordial ocean from which, according to Egyptian religion, the world was born. In Luxor, his work as constructor was yet more evident. The temple entrance was divided up by a series of huge pillars. Opposite the first, 6 huge statues were carved, representing himself, 4 seated and 2 standing. Today, only fragments remain. The facade, on the other hand, is entirely decorated with battle scenes depicting him fighting at Kadesh in today's Syria against the Hittites. The courtyard of Ramses II, in which the pharaoh had many statues built in his image, is immediately beyond the entrance. The 14th century mosque of Abu el-Hajjaj faces onto the courtyard, and a very important discovery was recently made in the mosque.
In July 2007, there was a big fire inside the tomb of Abu el-Hajjaj, and this is, as we were aware about this site of the tomb of Abu el-Hajjaj, we were sure that there is something inside the tomb because it was built over part of the open court of Ramses II. That's why we took the chance and we began to reveal these inscriptions, which was covered by a thick layer of mortar made of clay, and this helped in keeping and preserving the reliefs and the scenes which was carved from the time of Ramses II, and nobody see it from this time until we revealed it last February. The meaning of this discovery, it completed the story of Ramses II here inside Luxor Temple. Ramses II did a lot of buildings at Luxor Temple. Ramses II, as you know, turned the land of Egypt to be an open court for his buildings, but this part was the lost part of what he did in Luxor Temple. So this is the first time we completed the story of his buildings inside this part of Luxor Temple.
But Ramses the Builder did much more. He created many works of art marked with scrolls bearing his name, and monuments decorated with statues that showed his triumphs. The best example of his ideals is the Ramasseum. Ramses II wanted to construct this important monument as his own funerary temple. Despite the fact that it was a public building, it was intended, just like a tomb, to carry out its own private function only after the sovereign's death. The temple was, in fact, designed not so much to house the pharaoh's body after his death, but rather as a place where all cults linked to his person would be celebrated for centuries. To create it, Ramses II dismantled and reused a whole series of other buildings. Strangely, the same fortune was also to befall the Ramasseum, which was gradually taken apart by later pharaohs. And yet, it continues to fascinate visitors as it must have done in the past.
Actually, when I come to this place, even at night, I can smell history. A history that cannot be written, cannot be known, because this man was unique. To come and sit beside this statue of Ramses II, about 1,000 tons. Can you believe it? This was cut from Aswan, from granite, came through the Nile to this place. We can imagine how the quest of immortality for the ancient Egyptian made them to this unique architecture.
The first courtyard of the Ramasseum housed many great statues of Ramses as Osiris. Today, unfortunately, many of these statues have been ruined, just like the enormous statue of the seated pharaoh. Originally 17 meters high, this is the demonstration of precisely how Ramses II celebrated the cult of his personality with majestic works.
So if any one of you who's hearing me now will come one day, stand beside this huge statue, you will feel as a dwarf. You will look in this temple and you will understand the quest of immortality of Ramses II.
Ramses II also encouraged the spread of his image and works through important actions. The pharaoh was born around 1300 BC in Avaris, a city of ancient traditions, and it was here, during the early years of his reign, that he decided to build a new capital, Pi-Ramesses. Almost nothing remains today of the ancient splendor of this great city. And what has been preserved is now buried in an area that is today used for agricultural production. The name meant Ramses' house, and it actually remained his house until his death. But why did Ramses II want to build a new city right on the delta, so far from what had always been the main centers of power of ancient Egypt?
Reason number one, his family originated from here, from these surroundings. Reason number two is a political one. He was interested, along with his followers, into gaining power in the Middle East, in the near Middle East, nowadays Syria, Palestine. Reason number three, and most of it obviously most important, an economical reason. He wanted to trade on the routes far to the north, via land and via sea, and there were excellent connections to these routes to nowadays Turkey, Greece, or to the east, even to Afghanistan and beyond.
Thanks to German archaeologist Edgar Pusch and his team, working in today's village of Cantir, where Pi-Ramesses stood so long ago, today we have a clearer idea as to how the city must have looked in ancient times.
At the top of its splendor, Pi-Ramesses was one of the major cities of the world, if not the biggest one. It covered an area of about 30 square kilometers, which is even to be compared to Rome at its peak and height of splendor.
Most of the materials used to build Pi-Ramesses were taken apart and reused in the construction of a new city, Tanis. The reasoning behind this choice was mainly religious. The priests of Amun, the main creator god according to Theban cosmogony, were against those of Seth, whose power was centered in the western area of the delta. Gradually, the priests of Amun had the better of those of Seth, the dynastic god of the family of Ramses. It was thus decided to destroy Pi-Ramesses and create a new capital with those materials, Tanis. This important decision allowed Ramses II to reap the rewards of all his predecessors had done. Starting with the person who had given life to a new royal stock, his grandfather Ramses I, with whom an important era of Egyptian history began, with him a new dynasty was born, the 19th, and the central power began to move towards the delta area.
Ramses I reigned for a very short time and then was succeeded by his son, Seti I. Seti I's son was Ramses II, and his mother, Ramses II's mother, was named Tuya, and she was also from a military family, and Ramses II was very devoted to his mother and built monuments for her and treated her very well. Ramses II was very important during his father's reign. He was commander-in-chief of the army. He led the Egyptian army into battle. He helped with his father's building projects. And when his father died, he was more than ready to become king himself.
It was thus that Ramses II, having become king, enjoyed the inheritance left by his forefathers, completing their ideals. Simply building a new capital was not enough for the young pharaoh. He understood that in order to promote the cult of his power, he needed to spread his image throughout Egypt. The image that Ramses II wanted to leave behind was that of a young warrior, ready to fight and conquer for the glory of his people. And this is precisely what is represented in his statues, which, however, would appear to differ significantly from his mummy.
Fortunately, the mummy of Ramses II, who died at approximately 90 years of age, was rediscovered and is still available to make a comparison between the symmetry of his statue and the king himself. As opposed to the statue of Akhenaten, the statues of Ramses II do not depict the king as a man, but rather emphasize the physical characteristics of a king.
But a king had great responsibilities. Ramses II was well able to bear his and to guarantee peace to his people, and did not hesitate in declaring war when necessary. His main enemies were the Hittites, who he faced in the legendary Battle of Kadesh. Ramses wanted the main temples and monuments he had constructed to show a detailed account of the battle. From the bas-reliefs of the Ramasseum, Karnak, and particularly Abu Simbel, we can reconstruct the main stages of this battle. Ramses took a powerful army to Kadesh, capital of the Hittite Empire. But the Hittite army was no less powerful. After the initial skirmishes, Ramses fell into a carefully laid enemy trap. Two captured spies declared that the Hittite army was a long way from Kadesh and that the city had therefore been left undefended. The pharaoh launched his attack, which was immediately answered by the Hittites, who were, contrary to the spies' accounts, hidden within the stronghold. Ramses reorganized his forces, passed the Orontes River, and decided to besiege the city. The Hittites defended themselves so well that in the end the battle came to a natural conclusion, with neither side admitting defeat, and both maintaining that they had won. And yet not everyone would appear to agree with this version.
But from looking at all the record and looking at the Hittites' record, we can understand that Ramses II was defeated by the Hittites. He did not win the war at all. Then actually, I'm the one who believes that Ramses II never won the Battle of Kadesh. And the main reason for that is the propaganda everywhere. And the second important reason is the idea of the spy. That because of the wrong information that he got, he left his army on his back and he went alone with his army to go after the Hittites. And this is why I really believe that he lost the battle.
What we do know is that the two sides, having realized that victory was impossible, decided to form an alliance against a common enemy, the Assyrians. Yet again, Ramses II showed he was a true forerunner, drawing up the first ever peace treaty in history. But the pharaoh wanted more. He ordered the text of the marriage agreement between himself and one of the daughters of the Hittite king to be sculpted into the Abu Simbel temple facade. The sovereign thus sealed an everlasting pact with the very person who, up until then, had been his greatest enemy.
The daughter of the great chief of Hatti, after having crossed Egypt, was brought before His Majesty. His Majesty saw that she was fair of face as a goddess. He ordered her name to be wife of the king, Mahat Hor Neferure, that she may live long.
In Saqqara, a team led by the archaeologist Alen Zivi, investigating the ancient necropolis of Memphis, made an extremely important discovery: the tomb of a person closely linked to the Egyptian-Hittite peace treaty.
The owner of the tomb. Who was the owner of the tomb? What is the meaning of this tomb? What does it bring new? Very much, because here we have the clue, the main one. We have two names with some titles. We have the name which I read, can be discussed, but Nefertari, the one who was born from the two gods, Horus and Set. Okay, one. And here I was so puzzled during some time, a long time, as a matter of fact, before we made a complete discovery, another name, Paharnoua, or Pirarnoua. All this we knew, and we knew also from the Hittite source, Hittite side, with the diplomatic correspondence found in Bogasköy, which is was the main city of the Hittite, Hattusa in Anatolia, now Turkey, not so far from Ankara. And in this diplomatic correspondence, the Hittites several times spoke about a royal pharaonic, a royal Egyptian envoy, messenger, ambassador, we can call him an ambassador, who was called Paharnawa or Pirarnawa. And this Pirarnawa was just a name. And one day I understood suddenly that because I knew that this guy, the owner of this tomb, was also a royal messenger, a royal ambassador. We were in the time of Ramses II. We have the cartouche. I understood Paharnawa is here. This is the tomb of the Paharnawa mentioned by the Hittites.
Ramses II proved to be a clever politician and worthy warrior. He created works destined to last forever. He loved and was loved by his people, and upon his death, left a wealthy, peaceful kingdom. This led his heir, Merenptah, facing the difficult, if not impossible, task of living up to comparison.
Merenptah was the son of Ramses the Great and his second chief queen, Iset-Nofret. He was appointed crown prince in about the 55th year of his father's 67-year-long reign, surviving 12 older brothers and half-brothers to attain this rank. He was himself relatively old when he succeeded his father.
After having waited many years and finally having come to the throne, Merenptah found he faced an impossible task: to live up to comparison with his father. He failed and was equal to his father in only one thing: his tomb.
Merenptah died after about 10 years as king of Egypt and was buried in this enormous tomb, one of the biggest in the Valley of the Kings.
The large burial chamber, accessible through a long, steep corridor, still holds the large alabaster sarcophagus that housed the pharaoh's mummy, now preserved in the Egyptian Museum of Cairo. Merenptah was only one of the more than 100 children that sources attribute to Ramses II. The celebration of his personality and the ultimate goal of reaching immortality would of course continue through his descendants, and Ramses understood this better than any other. And yet such greatness also brought him great pain. Having reigned until the age of almost 90, he saw many of his children die before him. This was perhaps why he decided to build a tomb in which to preserve the mortal remains of his children in an attempt to guarantee their immortality too.
Here we are in one of the largest tombs in the Valley of the Kings, KV5. This tomb, as our American colleagues who are excavating here said, that Ramses II planned to build this tomb for his sons. As we know, Ramses II has more than 100 sons and daughters, and we have found some of the tombs of these sons and daughters, but most of the names of his sons we did not find until now their tombs. So that's why they thought that Ramses II planned to design and build this tomb to be the eternal place for the bodies of his sons.
In 1825, the English archaeologist James Burton discovered the entrance to a tomb identified as KV5. The inside of the tomb, however, was in such disastrous conditions that the archaeologist, after having visited just a few of the rooms, thought the structure without value. The tomb was then forgotten about for more than 150 years. It was only in 1989 that the American archaeologist Kent Weeks rediscovered the entrance and began an in-depth systematic investigation. After years of painstaking research, in 1995 he made an important discovery. Whilst he and his team were digging in the main chamber, called Chamber 3, he went through a pile of rubble to find himself in a corridor more than 60 meters long, with many other rooms opening up to the sides. The discovery was considered the most important since that of Tutankhamun. From the few bas-reliefs on the walls and the many objects found on the ground, Kent Weeks reached the conclusion that it was the burial house of Ramses' children. A point of view that is not shared by all.
This tomb is the largest in the valley. This tomb is a big mystery. This tomb has a lot to be discovered inside it. This tomb still needs more restorations, more excavations. So that's why I think it is a big riddle, a big mystery for us to say it, the value of the kings.
No one knows exactly what happened to the mummies that were preserved in KV5. Perhaps some were stolen or destroyed. Others may have been moved to preserve them better and to stop grave robbers from reaching them, as was the case with the mummy of Ramses II. It was found in 1881 in a secret hiding place in Deir el-Bahari near the Temple of Queen Hatshepsut, where many other royal mummies had been hidden. The pharaoh's body was probably moved there shortly after his death. His tomb was thus abandoned or reused for other purposes over the centuries, also deteriorating due to flooding and earthquakes. Important restoration work is now underway.
As the head of Antiquities now, I'm looking for people to restore this tomb. Because even there is very little scenes that you can see in this tomb, but still it has the smell of the most famous king of ancient Egypt, Ramses the Great.
Great monuments destined to last for thousands of years. Works of art to hand down his name from generation to generation. Military feats of epic proportions. And more than 100 children to continue the stock that was to bring Egypt to the peak of its greatness. All this in a single man. Ramses II. He was the only pharaoh to explore all the paths to immortality. And he did so as a man, as a king, and as a god.